we have many different idolatries here in North America that other cultures, once they come to know Jesus, can spot them pretty quickly in our culture today, that we who are in the West have a hard time seeing. How do we identify the idols that are there and then strip them down or strip them off as much as we can that have attached, almost like a barnacle? How do we strip it down to get to the true essence of the gospel so that it might be able to be communicated effectively? Or is that even possible?
Westerners, and particularly Americans maybe, have tended to look at their theology as the standard theology, and that theology can then be exported to other cultures and other parts of the world, but we have the standard theology. And I think we're coming to realize that that is not the case. It's certainly not biblical, but it's not even true. There is no pure gospel. There is no universal theology that you can carry around in a backpack from place to place and just unleash, and there it is, already a pre-made package. We have to realize that every theology is a contextual theology. So all theology is contextual, and that's not only a good thing, it's the only way that theology can be done. So we have to understand that the gospel has to be contextualized. At the same time, I really like what you say about that process allowing us to see our unity within the body and these various different ways of articulating and embodying or living out the good news coming together within one body. And I think you see a beautiful, and I'll come back to Colossians in a minute, but I think you see a beautiful picture of that in Revelation chapter 7, where standing before the throne and worshiping God and the Lamb is this multinational multitude made up of people of every tribe and language and people and nation. And they are together praising God, but even in the new creation, those cultural differences are not eliminated. They are not erased. They are still there as tribes and languages and peoples and nations. And so that's a beautiful picture of the unity that comes within the various cultural differences and the diversity that we have. And so I think one of the keys is listening to people with other life experiences, people from other cultures, people from other backgrounds, and realizing that we all have our own blind spots and that there is no pure theology. None of us have the final answers. And so one of the ways I think that within that multicultural context that we can come together is by just listening to one another and learning from one another. One author talks about the global hermeneutical community, where we all have our different ways of interpreting and looking at the same good news, and yet when we come together, we can learn from one another and grow. For example, in my experience, I remember teaching a class for pastors in the Middle East, and we were talking about the Gospels. It was a class on the Synoptic Gospels. And when we came to the passages on persecution, I realized that my understanding was so weak and so limited about that experience. But these were people that were experiencing those kind of things on a daily basis. And so I learned how to interpret and to understand some of Jesus' language on persecution and the hardship that Christians have to face in a way that I never could have if I hadn't been in that context and listened to my brothers and sisters who were going through that on a regular basis. And that's happened to me over and over again. So in this process of trying to discern what are the limits and how far can we go and that type of thing, I think it starts with learning and listening to one another.